Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to give everybody just a couple more seconds to filter in. I want to thank everybody here for being here today and taking time out of your busy day to learn a little bit more about this issue. So welcome to everybody. My name is Christina Sandoval-Piquet. I'm from UC San Diego, but I also co-chair the Professional Development and Advocacy Subcommittee, which is part of GRAC. And Mike, if you can share your screen with that first slide about who is Waca. Hello, thank you everybody for joining us. Welcome to the graduation requirement, how did Valverde do it, town hall, issue town hall. As you can see in the chat, we have a welcome as well from my other co-chair, Robin Hamilton. And, we are just simply asking that if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and trying to answer as many questions as we can here today. So let's talk a little bit about who Waca is really quickly, and then we'll get started.
Let me see, Christina, if I can, I'll go ahead and see if I can find that slide and pull it up for you.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. As we pull up this slide, I want to tell you a little bit about who WACAC is. WACAC is an organization that covers both California and Nevada. We service all professionals invested in the transition between high school and higher education. I know that some of you here today are WACAC members. Thank you for joining us today. If you are not a WACAC member, you can feel free to email us and ask us some information about how you become a member. And then we'll also be following up with a email. Thank you so much, Catalina. That talks a little bit about how you can join WACAC. So here is our mission statement. WACAC supports and advances the work of counseling and enrollment professionals for California and Nevada as they help all students realize their potential with the emphasis on freshman and transfer transitions to higher education and attention to access and equity for all students. One of the nice things about WACAC is that we get an opportunity to reach out to you and put together these events that deal with very specific and relevant issues that are going on in counseling and higher education. Next, I want to welcome onto the screen Jessica Green. Jessica is actually the chair for the Government Relations Committee, and I want her to tell us a little bit more about what they do in that committee and how you can join to be part of GRAC if you're so interested in. Jessica?
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, so my name is Jessica Green. I'm an admissions officer at UC San Diego, and I'm also the chair of the Government Relations and Advocacy Committee for WACAC. So WACAC has several standing committees, one of them being the Government Relations and Advocacy Committee. Our mission is really to demystify the legislative process in California and Nevada for our members. So talking about issues, talking about bills, and then working on advocacy for issues that increase equity and access for students in education. So I'm just very happy that all these parties could come together today to inform you a little bit about these issues and topics so that you have a good understanding of them and then can ask questions from the experts who have done it themselves. If you have an interest in joining GRAC, I'll put the link in the chat box if you want to learn more about advocacy and participate in our standing meetings. So turn it back over to Christina. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your continued leadership and for telling us a little bit more about GRAC. Just to let you know, this is brought to you by WACAC, GRAC's committee, and the subcommittee that put it together today is a professional development and advocacy group. Aside from myself, Robin Hamilton is also a co-chair, and we'd be more than happy to hear from you if you're interested in learning more about what we do. But let's get started with our presentation today. We have some wonderful speakers. One of our speakers is going to be Superintendent Mike McCormick from Valverde School District. Our other is going to be Assistant Superintendent Mark Lenore, also from Valverde School District. And we're going to kick it off right now with a brief presentation about what is HR 469 from Carolina Cifuentes, who is the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness at Riverside County Office of Education. Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here with all of you today. And I know, like I said, I can't echo enough thank you, considering everything we have going on. We have to get ready for AP testing and statewide testing and all the things that are going on in secondary. Just we're excited that you're here with us to learn more and basically think big, think different, and consider any and all questions. We are going to stay on as long as you need us. This is being recorded, so just FYI, in case you want to keep your cameras on, turn them off, make yourself anonymous, it's up to you. But this is being recorded, and just wanted to let you know in case you want to go back as well and share this information. So like I was shared, my name is Carolina Cifuentes. I'm the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness for Riverside County Office of Education. I'm also Inter-Association Chair for WACAC. So if you're not a member, I highly encourage you to become a member. If you're a public school counselor, it's free. So there's no reason why you should not sign up. But WACAC is my home for all things college access. So anything that I need support in my county, from how to help teachers learn how to write improved letters of recommendation to understanding award letters, I'm able to partner with leaders like Christina and Jessica to come in and help me and help my schools and my county with all things college and career readiness. As you know, in a lot of our field in our work, especially if you got a PPS credential in California, you didn't learn this in your program. You didn't learn a lot of the college access and success pieces as well. So it's super important that you really look into WACAC. Like I said, I can't do the work that I do without the support of WACAC and the leadership. So huge shout out to them, and definitely you want to get signed up and to get the latest information. I'm also the in addition to WACAC, I'm also the chair of the California Student Aid Commission. So the California Student Aid Commission gives all your students those Cal grants, over $2 billion. So hope of awards to your students every year. So hopefully today we'll be able to answer some of your questions, from logistics on how to do this, what does this award mean, but all the way up to the policy and what that's going to look like. Last, I'm going to go and introduce, we also have an assistant principal, former assistant principal joining us, Matthew Elder, who is now working at the county office as a new CalSOAP director. Our county just got a new CalSOAP program. So he's here as well to help answer any of your questions in the chat or later on today. So we're here to talk about this new budget proposal. And so I went ahead, and you received in the email what it looks like in the governor's budget. So it's K-12, and it's in his K-12 education report. It's also in his higher education report. But there's been a confusion, like, what does this mean? Is this a graduation requirement? Are we going to hold diplomas from students? And the answer is no. How it's written right now is it's a requirement. They're asking for a requirement from LEA school district, public school districts, to ensure students receive the help and support and get their FAFSA or California DREAM Act applications submitted if eligible, so for one or the other. Now you're going to hear today from one of the first school districts in the state of California that made it an actual graduation requirement, and that's still something districts can do. So if this passes, whether it does or does not, that's still something you can do within your own school district. We now have in our county 2 school districts that have made it a graduation requirement. And it's not a requirement of hold the line and let's not give them the diploma, but it's ensuring equity that every student that leaves those school districts has some type of post-secondary plan. So Superintendent McCormick's going to talk about, if a student opts out of this FAFSA and says, I'm going to the military, Mr. McCormick, okay, well, which recruiter are you working with? I'm going to work, then show me your resume. It's really about building a systemic approach to ensuring all the students have support. So here's exactly how it's written right now for the government, and the Governor Newsom's proposal about just the support and looking at, we still don't have all the details, more of in terms of the budget and how much additional funding, et cetera, will be given to school districts, but that's just to give you an idea. So you have some time, and I'll put in the chat some additional documents you can read. So as you know, many of you know, Louisiana, the state of Texas, and Illinois have all made it a requirement in their state. And hopefully today you're going to leave here with more than enough reasons of why this is important. Next slide, please, Mr. McCormick. So, so when you also, something to keep in mind, thank you, perfect. is in addition to making it to the governor's budget is huge. That's making the end game. But we have a few amazing assembly members like Eloise Gomez Reyes, who's out and she's in Southern California, 47th district. She's been pushing this conversation for a few years. So she also has an assembly bill 469 right now moving through the process, pretty much that aligns with the same type of mission. She's been pushing this for a few years now. So huge shout out to her. And if you're from her district, she knows her community, and that's what you're going to learn about today. A majority of her community, probably over 70% of her students are what would be low income. Our students that if they apply, they'll get financial aid, they'll get a Cal grant, they'll get a Pell grant. And she's aware of that I need to help build a system so all students get the support. If we're really about equity, then we need to also prepare students for their post-secondary and life after high school. So next slide. So I'm just gonna give you an idea of what we're up against and why this is important. So this is just a few slides. If you know, the California Student Aid Commission has a dashboard called Race to Submit, where we now track FAFSA and California Dream Act completions weekly, daily, throughout the state. Now, this has kind of been taken a little bit, this was taken from our own county. We started our own race about 5-6 years ago, and Mark Lenore, who's also on the call, was at the county at the time that helped launch this. And as you can see right now, we're at 47% completed currently. So we're talking, even though we have in some school districts, 80% students that are low income, as a state, over 65% of our students, yet we don't have all of them submitting and doing an application for various reasons. So this is about building a systemic focus for the state. We right now leave on the table, community college students leave on the table over $2 billion of Pell Grant money just because they don't do their FAFSA. That's $2 billion. So this isn't just, FAFSAs and college enrollment. This is the state of California concern, because that's $2 billion of federal dollars we could be bringing into our state. Okay, next slide. So when you look at what some of the byproducts have been for our county, so I'm going to give you kind of a county perspective, and Valverde is going to go into the depth of how they did this. So our county decided we were going to push FAFSA completion. We knew if we push post-secondary, not just four-year college, but two-year trade school, technical schools, if we push post-secondary, what's going to be the byproduct is they're going to graduate high school. So we push rigor in Riverside County. So all of our school districts, even if they haven't made it a graduation requirement, I'll put in the chat, for example, Desert Sands Unified, they have LCAP, they have FAFSA completion in their LCAP plan. It's part of their mission of their school, of their district. So they want to give strong handoffs to all their students for post-secondary. So we've built this. I don't want you to think Riverside County got a big grant. We got all this money to do this. No, we did not. We did this with the existing resources, but with leadership like Mr. McCormick and Mr. Lenore, who you're going to hear from today. So what's been some of the byproducts of the FAFSA completion we've done in Riverside County? We now, for the second year in a row, have the highest graduation rate in the state. Yes, Riverside County has higher than Orange County, than San Diego, than Los Angeles. But we didn't go after that. We went after rigor, post-secondary. Superintendent McCormick said, I want them to push for community college, trade school, because then I know they'll graduate high school. Next slide. So for 2 years in a row, we've been highest in the state. This also is we're really big on equity. Everyone says they're about equity. This is a decision. This is equity. This is equity. If we can provide a systemic focus of truly giving strong handoffs to our higher ed partners, saying, Jessica, I got the student, she has her FAFSA done, she has this done, she is ready for UC San Diego. That's changing that role as a K-12. We've had them for 13 years, yet we're so easily to just say, oh, they're done, they're not my student anymore, they already graduated. This has been some of the byproducts of all of our student groups, ethnicity groups, and I can show you slide after slide. We didn't go after graduation or lower suspensions. We went after rigor. We went after ensuring our students had stronger post-secondary enrollment. Next slide. So I'm going to give you, this is, before COVID, I'll show you in just a second. So when you look at this data and you see the number, what does this mean? So people will say, okay, graduations increased, Catalina, you guys push FAFSA across Riverside County. All your school districts are highly involved. Valverde has the highest completion rates in the state for their high schools. But what does that mean for students? This is an example. These are lives. These are numbers of students. Since we started this push, how many more students are enrolled in post-secondary compared to when we first started? So we're talking 30,000 more students have been enrolled in college, 2-year, 4-year community than back before we were pushing. I go back to, we didn't talk about, we pushed college going, FAFSA completion, ensuring every student had opportunity. Next slide. So pandemic hits, because I'm not going to hear and act like it's all perfect, because it's not. It's not. And this is why this work, this budget proposal from our governor comes at the time where we need it the most as a state. You see all the work we've done in our county, and you see the drop we've taken in college enrollment for class of 2020. And I bet you any one of you, your high schools or your school districts or your cities, if you pulled up your slide from National Student Clearinghouse student tracker data, you would see something similar. You got to remember, Riverside County is really big. We serve over 33,000 students over 400,000 students, K-12, but over 33,000 students, seniors only. So when I showed you that data on the graduation rate, we have the highest graduation rate in the state for counties that serve 10,000 or more students. So large counties is what that graduation rate is, not small counties. So when you look here, we're hurting, right? We took a big drop. Now, if you go to the next slide, please, Mike, you'll see where did we take our drop? And that tells you our overall drop in orange, red. Our drop in green is 2-year college. Our drop in blue is 4-year. So our 4-year students, they did their FAFSAs, they submitted. We lost 81 students as a whole county. But yet, when you look at this slide right here, the biggest drop was our 2-year. We lost over 2,000 students. I'm going to tell you more than 50% of those students did not do their FAFSA. Right? And that's why we're here. That's why we're here to talk about what this means for students. Now, when all the research says, everything I can give you from all the surveys we've done in the last 2 years or year from the California Student Aid Commission, the #1 barrier for our students that go to college is not that they didn't take AP chemistry, or they didn't take enough AP classes, or they don't feel academically ready. The #1 barrier is paying for college. #1 barrier is how to pay, college affordability. Okay, next slide. So the biggest push of the governor's proposal, before I turn it over to the Valverde team, is about really pushing college affordability. It's more than just tuition and fees. It's about expanding, getting all the opportunities available, the total cost of attendance. And so I want you today, as you hear from Valverde, I want you to think big. I want you to think bold. This is equity. This is not about forcing students, or especially we're going to talk about undocumented students and those fears. But if we're truly about all students, and we have to stand by bold legislation and bold proposals that really say we're going to do whatever we can for all students and shift our mindset. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent McCormick.
Thank you, Catalina, and good afternoon, everybody. And a special thanks to Christina and Jessica, who we've been working with to make this something that hopefully you'll find useful. And so just a little bit about Valverde. We serve a very diverse community of scholars, 20,141 students. We're about 75% Latinx, about 13% African-American. Nearly 84% of our students participate in the National School Lunch Program. About 1/5 of our students are learning English as a second language. And you can see some of the other details there before you. 97% FAFSA completion rate, and some of the other accolades we've had as a district. And I think the next thing to show is just, here's the board goals. And this is kind of, think of this like a strategic plan, but a one-pager. And I think the most important thing to point out here is that right on the board's goals is maintain FAFSA completion at 97% or higher at our comprehensive high schools. And so we're just putting it right into the system that this is important, and this is something that we want to keep moving towards. And you can see here's our mission statement, the Valverde Unified School District. It's really important for us. And I would say, for us, we made this a graduation requirement, but I really like the idea of, like, if I was to rebrand it today, I would probably call it FAFSA and CADAA Completion. So something for you all to consider. And we started that back in 2017. And, this was inspired a lot. In fact, Mr. Lenore, who you'll hear from momentarily, was working on this. And I was doing a little research at home, and I came in the next day and said, hey, I think Louisiana's getting ready to make this thing a state graduation requirement. And so, like only Mark Lenore can do, he gets on the phone and cold calls Louisiana and gets in touch with somebody over there. And we started connecting with Louisiana and actually got our requirement in place before they were able to get theirs implemented. And we think, we were the first ones in the state of California. It was actually enacted by the Board of Education on a unanimous vote, 5-0, June 20th of 2017. And so kind of the idea here is that we really wanted this to be from the top down and from the bottom up. And Mr. Lenore, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McCormick. So Mr. McCormick mentioned that I called Louisiana State Department of Ed, talked to them about it. They were 2 years in the planning, and we have a huge debt of gratitude for Louisiana. We used virtually some of their documents, their opt-out form. They were very easy to speak with, and they shared everything that they had. Roughly 7 weeks after that phone call, it was a graduation requirement in Valverde. And so what did we do? Well, the first things that we did was, we need to speak with our counselors about this because they're the ones who do most of the work in regards to this. So I met personally with every one of the counseling teams at each of our 4 high schools. We have 3 comprehensive high schools and a continuation high school. We mentioned that we would like to be able to see this be a graduation requirement. The thing that we promised them was this, that if we do make this a graduation requirement, it will not fall just on your shoulders, but we will make sure that this is a systemic effort that goes along with all of our other college and career readiness initiatives, that we have a team behind it. And some of what we're going to be sharing with you right now, these next several slides, are the why. And we purposefully do that because we want to make sure that you take time to lead your leaders. Because if you try to take something on like this by yourself, you may probably experience some success, but not as much as if you have your whole system behind you. And it really needs to come from the leaders. And that's something we've learned in all of the major school reform efforts, that the top needs to speak to this. And so what we learned when we dived into it and did some research was that in our area, the Inland Empire of Southern California, we had the lowest adult college degree attainment than any other large metropolitan area in the country. And this information came directly from the Lumina Foundation. And so we kind of saw this as a rallying cry. Next slide, Mike. And so again, here's some of the rationale. We know that more than 80% of qualified students who do not enroll, as Catalina said, the main barrier is financial barriers, particularly right now. And so if we can get our students to fill out the FAFSA or DREAM Act, there's a high likelihood that they probably are going to get some form of monetary support to help them with their post-secondary aspirations. Next slide. And so we also know that the students that do fill out a FAFSA, they're 72% more likely to persist than their peers who do not. And especially with lower income, they're 122% more likely to persist in college. All of this data I'm sharing with you, this research, comes directly from EdTrust West. Next slide. This was the thing that touched my heart. We get into the business to make a difference. This is what brought us here. We know that in California, for every dollar that we invest in our students, the state will eventually see a $4.50 return. So if we really want to make a difference, what can we do to ensure that we are backing up our 13 years of investment with all of our kids by making sure we spend another 45 minutes with them and supporting them and filling out this document? Next slide. So why do we do this? We do it because we know that it really does make a difference. but we have to make it systematic. And we're going to share some information with you today that goes about showing how we do it. Next slide. So Mike is sharing this slide with you right now. We know that when we first started the work in 2014 in pushing FAFSA, back then there was $500 million left on the table in the state of California alone. So if we know that there's money left over, we should be doing our best to make sure our kids get hopefully the lion's share of that if it's not being utilized. And so that was another form of inspiration for us when we took on this initiative. Next slide. I want to make sure we're clear here. We do have an opt-out policy like Louisiana. Our first year in implementing the graduation requirement, we had 1,563 seniors. We had 11 students opt out that year, just 11. The following year, we had 10. And each year it's kind of gone down slowly. It's become part of our culture. And the ones that do opt out, they're usually extreme issues, custody issues, or it might be they are of a certain religion and they're going out of state, or and not going to college first, or a number of just foster care. They're extreme situations. Our counselors have gotten really good at just selling the importance of this. And in my whole entire time working this now, this is our year 4, I believe I've gotten 3 calls from our community. One was just on the concern about identity theft. Explained the process to them, and I wasn't successful in changing their mind. But all they had to do is fill out the form, and we opted them out, and that was it. So we do not get too many calls like that after we share the importance of the why. And so Mike and Matt, I would encourage you to jump in. This right here is a slide that we've never shared. This is the first time we're sharing this slide. And it really breaks down the level of employee, what they do. And, you know, this is so important because by looking at this, you could see how the system works. And let's just start at the top, the teacher.
Yeah, and I would just say, Mark, you know, before you get going, if you're going to take a screenshot of anything, take a screenshot of this one, because I think the counselors that we've spoken with, you know, it's like all of a sudden there's a panic when they hear FAFSA or California Dream Act completion requirement. It's like this is all going to be setting on their shoulders. They've already got caseloads of 500 kids, and how the heck is this even possible? And I would say, you know, kudos to Mr. Lenore. Yes, this is the inaugural viewing of this particular slide. And Mark and Matt, I'll send it back over to you guys to kind of go through this. So this is a way that when you have the whole system behind you, this work becomes very possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That summer, the first summer before we enacted the graduation requirement, I went and I spoke with all the history, social studies teachers. I was hoping that they could get time in the students' class for presentations by the counselors or any outside agencies or partners we had, maybe some time to get their FSA ID completed in their classroom. And when I went to each of the high schools, I got the commitment from the teachers. I had one high school that was on the fence, and I felt like I didn't do a good job. So what I did was I circled back with a leader on that campus who was respected, and I asked for their help. She in turn went to them, got them to buy in. And so as you're working and doing anything you want to see implemented, I wish I could say I'm 100% effective. I'm not. I'm like anyone else. And we just work to get everyone on board, whatever angle we could. Matt, did you want to talk about counselor and registrars?
Yeah, and so definitely when I started this work in Valverde, I was actually the administrator at our sister high school, Citrus Hill, and doing the work. And when I was given the opportunity to transfer over to our new high school with our first year of seniors at Orange Vista, there were 3 teams that I met with when I first got there. The first team I met with was my admin team, just talking about what seniors look like and going through our first graduating class. And then I met with the counseling team who I already had relationships with because we used to meet monthly and everything. The third team that I met with was the senior teachers. And the guidance text and working with anybody who interacted on the school site with seniors just to show how important of a role that they played, because the government econ teachers, the senior English, you could have a college career class, guidance text, your different ASB director who is big on school culture. So we met with each individual group at the school site and just kind of laid out what the plan should be and how they needed support to assist us with our goal, which was a district and site goal. So definitely with the support from cabinet and the school board, it was, this is our district vision, this is what we want to do, so how do we get this logistically done and implement a good plan?
Yeah, so, our registrars will work at first to do our batch upload of GPAs to the California Student Aid Commission. That's all done electronically now, and they've got the process down. They work with their IT department. That is a smooth running operation. We're at the point right now where I just get out of the way, because I am just in the way if I try to manage this. They manage themselves, and it's flowing really well. Site administrators, they help reinforce the message. They make sure that any layers of support that the team needs, that they're actually getting that support. From a cabinet level, myself and Mr. McCormick, we will take a look at the data and say, hey, I notice you're falling behind this other school. Can you tell me what's happening? We have monthly meetings with our principals. We make it part of the evaluation process. You will push this because this is one of the most important things we can do. Our Board of Education actually set policy and had a vision. That vision came from us in the sense of sharing information with them, the importance of this, the impact that it has. So part of our job is educating people on the why. And those slides that we have in the slide deck are a perfect foundation for you to start that conversation.
Yeah, and these, I'm guessing this recording and these slides will all be made available to all the participants here and likely beyond. So just one other thing I'd like to mention before we move off this slide is TODAC. That's a grassroots organization that's existed in our area for over 30 years that provides mixed status families, undocumented families with legal support. And so they partnered right along with us. And because they have the community relations, as well, they were a very trusted entity for our mixed status families and undocumented families, potentially with Dreamer students, where they felt like they could get solid information that was accurate and reliable. And so I think that really assisted the overall completion strategy. And so I would just urge you, if there's organizations like this that exist within your own communities, make sure to
not sure if you can hear me. But also Moreno Valley College does presentations. Their counselors work with us. They do presentations from their end. We try to harness anyone who could help promote the message of the why on this. And so it's been working out really well. I believe we might have lost Mike there. Is that correct? Can you hear me?
It looks like we did. Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen, Mark?
No, I could share my screen.
Okay. While you do that, can you?
I'm back.
You're back?
I'm back. That was a very strange blip there. Okay. Sorry about that.
Well,
So let me move.
Before you
Go
move
ahead.
forward, if one of you can share, we did get a question in the chat. I think one thing we didn't start off with in the beginning, and if you can mention just a little bit about the demographics of the districts you serve. So in Riverside County, I'll say we are over 65% free and reduced lunch. We have plenty of Title I high schools. And I'll just let Superintendent McCormick share a little bit about that demographic, because I think there's a connection where we, how did we build that college going culture? And this actually led to one of your high schools for the first time had 100% graduation rate for all the African-American students. We could probably do a whole nother webinar, all the byproducts that have happened, but can you share a little bit about that? Your demographics you serve, so they understand that these are not, we're talking about Title I high schools, everyone.
Right. Yeah. So I'll just kind of quickly review. We're 75% Latinx, 13% African American. About a fifth of our students are learning English as a second language. 84% of our students participate in the National School Lunch Program. And so, like I like to say, we serve a very diverse community of scholars.
Okay, one of the things that was asked of us was, how do we build trust in our community? Mr. McCormick's already outlined a TODEC Legal Center, huge help. We started this initiative when the whole DACA thing was going on. It wasn't a very popular time. We declared that we are a DACA safe district, kind of got hammered by some out there for that. But it just, again, whatever we could do to support all of our students, no matter what ethnicity they are. Our Family Engagement Center is one of 8 in the state of California that's being recognized right now by the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. Our Family Engagement Center is continuously going, offering workshops, offering support, offering support with medical service through Borrego Health. We actually even have a bus that delivers produce out to certain areas because we have certain areas of our district that are a food desert. So our Family Engagement Center has been very active in the community. These are the things that help build trust. And I can go on and on about this, but between TODEC, our Family Engagement Center, and what our schools are doing with parents, all of these things help lead to trust. Next slide.
Yeah, and I would just say, just in case you didn't notice, around the outside of that slide are the flyers for all the different presentations that the Family Engagement Center has done in the recent months.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, we'll get to the next slide here.
Okay, so one of the things that Mike and I did was to help our counselors with students who had not filled out their FAFSA, and we're getting into late January, early February, is we organized all of the entire management team to get those students' names and phone numbers, call their houses, and actually encourage them to get in as soon as possible to get their FAFSA completed. We also asked if there's anything we could do to help them. And the first year, we made 750 calls in about 2.5 hours. The second year, we made about, I believe, 250. The third year, we didn't have to make any. And it just goes to show, we ask, hey, is there anything we could do? Do we need to gather the management team together to help do our dialing for dollars? We literally have a script that's made up. We have everything. We'd be happy to share all of that information with you if you would like to do something like this in your district. Next slide. We got to make sure we're having fun to celebrate too, the successes. As students get their FAFSA filled out, there's things that they can get involved in. Matt, you can feel free to jump in on this one because you actually helped organize some of these things.
Yeah, so definitely what we want to do is we're at the very end. End of February usually is when we try to schedule it because we want our students to get those done before the deadline. So many of our, as you can see, the dates on there are before. With the virtual, it did go after the deadline, but our goal was to get those last few students that weren't sure about when they were going to fill it out and kind of give them that little extra incentive. So what we do is we would team up with ASB, and ASB was huge.
Yeah, what's up?
Go ahead.
ASB was huge when it came to working with them because they're the inner hub of the school sites. And what we would do is throw a big celebration. So every senior that had filled out their financial aid application on the day before our celebration was given an invitation ticket to come and have fun. We'd have inflatables, we'd have food, we'd have t-shirts made. It was an event. Rancho Verde would do Cascella, Citrus Hill would do FAFSA Fiesta, and then Orange Vista did Mardi Gras since the time frame was around Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So we just tried to make it fun for the kids. They didn't want to be that student sitting in their senior class with only 2 other students because they didn't fill it out in time to do the celebration. So it was just a little motivation and a lot of fun celebrating a big accomplishment for the kids.
Yeah, and I would just say, if you're interested in this, and you're on Instagram, you can search any one of these schools and their ASB accounts, Orange Vista ASB, Rancho Verde ASB. I know Rancho Verde just last week did a big Cascella celebration that was drive up for COVID. So it was a drive-through celebration. And some of the pictures on there are just amazing. Kids having a good time. I'm a huge proponent of this. This is how you build culture. This should not feel like something that is a compliance-driven activity. This should feel like we're doing something fun that benefits our students. And so how you build the narrative around this, I think, is super important. And that ASB, if you think back to that chart with all the different stakeholders and their contributions to this, the ASBs are a significant portion of this. Now, when we're not in COVID and we're doing regular graduations, every student who completes the California DREAM Act application or a FAFSA application, one of the major incentives that we do is additional graduation tickets. And so wouldn't it be great if you had 100% FAFSA CADAA completion and all of your students got an extra 2 graduation tickets? You know, the cost is $0, really, if you think about it. And, you know, kids they want to be. You get the t-shirt, you get to go to the concert, and you get some extra graduation tickets.
Yep. Okay, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit because we're going to try to stick to the timelines, but we also do college kickoff where TK through grade 12, we're getting all of our students in researching, being a part of just planning and what their next steps are. What do they want to do when they leave our school system? And this starts at a very early age. Here's a picture of a student, kindergartner. One of our elementaries is starting this initiative where they take a picture of them in kindergarten, and then they're going to put it on the jumbo screen that we have at graduation with their current senior picture. Just our schools get creative, and that's what we want, because if you're getting creative, it's going to be fun and it's not going to feel like a mandate. Next slide. Here are some of the myths, obstacles caused by a potential FAFSA graduation. We're here to dispel all of these myths. And none of these things really should play a part. Take a look at all the categories. We've addressed these. Our counselors do an amazing job of addressing all of these with our parents. And that's why we have so little students opting out. Next slide. And then in 2017, on October 4th, we started the statewide initiative of Race to Submit. Mike, if we click, you can kind of see the kickoff here. I'm not sure if we're getting any noise, any sound, Mike, but we did a statewide kickoff in our school system, and this went up and down the state. We had Gabrielle Union that we got through a third party to come and help us celebrate and encourage our kids to get involved. This is Eric Waldo, Michelle Obama's personal assistant. And we celebrate, we try to have fun, and we try to make it a big deal. And our ASB and our band all put this together. It was just an amazing turnout, and it ended up being live streamed across the entire world. We got amazing results on our Facebook and social media channels. And as a result, Gabrielle Union ended up being utilized by a few other states because of our initiative on this. It was really cool to see. And so this started in Valverde, and we've been pushing it for some time. Next slide. And Catalina shared, this is CSAC's, California Student Aid Commission's dials, and you can look up any school, any high school in the state of California to see how we're doing. We utilize California Student Aid Commission to get weekly reports on our students. Next slide. And then in 2017, on October 18th, our state superintendent then encouraged all seniors to join the Race to Submit. And it just felt so good to see this going statewide. Next slide. Our leaderboard, this is, again, just another board that we take a look at enrollment, how many kids have completed, what's our percentages, who's leading the state right now. And so we have actual conversations in Valverde about this with our high school administrators on a regular basis. Next slide. And then, you know, states, about 3 years ago, as we started the Race to Submit, Louisiana, which was the state, again, remember that it had this as a graduation requirement, new graduation requirement. They had the highest increase in the United States. I wonder why. In California, we were number 10. Now, mind you, we started the race to submit at the same time, but if we go to the next slide, when you take a look at the actual numbers in California, not percentage, but in actual numbers, we were clearly doing better than the rest of the country as a whole. So the graduation requirement, the reinforcement of making sure this is systemic works. Next slide. But as Mr. McCormick said, this needs to be part of your culture. You already have a culture in your district. You might be pushing AVID and other post-secondary aspiration type programs. Start them early, reinforce the importance. Our kids know about A through G and the curriculum requirements for college before they get to the high school level. They learn about the importance of FAFSA before they get to the high school. And our parents do as well. So it needs to be systemized. Next slide.
Well, and I would say if you're not having your valedictorians return back to their elementary schools to do graduation walks right before graduation, you're missing a huge opportunity. And that's what you're seeing here is these are our valedictorians returning back to the elementary schools from which they came and displaying all of the stuff that they're going to wear at graduation. And if you want to see elementary teachers just break into tears when they see those students that were formerly theirs. And, you know, the other thing it does is it ties together the entire system because that former elementary school teacher now sees the fruits of their labor and their contribution to each student that they make. And it just fires up the little kids because they're getting to see, hey, I want to be there when I reach that point in my life. So just something for your consideration.
And here's some of the results. Our graduation rate continues to climb. As Catalina said earlier, I know that there's a lot of concern across all the states on achievement gaps. In our district, our African-American student population has really had a huge jump in their graduation rates. I believe we are one of the leaders in the state of California of large comprehensive high schools. And so our graduation rate, we've managed to be pretty successful at bringing that up. Next slide. CTE completion, you could see it went down, now it's starting to swing up. I don't have a slide on these things, but AP enrollment is skyrocketing. Number of students passing AP exams is skyrocketing. Our A through G completion, we are about 62%. That has had huge gains. I think we have the highest gains in Riverside County over the last 9 years. Next slide. And so here's Cal Grants offered, the number of grants that our students have received, and you could see it climbing up. In 2019, we actually had a smaller class than the actual class of 2018, yet our numbers still kept going up. And so there's a slide here showing a banner. We won the statewide race to submit more than once. Rancho Verde has been a consistent pillar of being one of the best in the state of California, probably for the past 5-6 years. Next slide. And you can see here's our college enrollment. Catalina showed the county college enrollment. We have this slide here to 2019. We also took a dip that mirrored the data that Catalina showed due to the pandemic, but we still had most of our kids, if not almost all of them, fill out the FAFSA. Next slide. And then Mike, if you want to talk about this.
Yeah, and this is kind of fits perfectly into a comment that we had in the chat from West Contra County. This is our portrait of a graduate. And we came together with our entire community, our business owners, our community members, our parents, our students, our educators, and really kind of collectively decided, you know, what is it that we don't want our students to graduate with in terms of skills and dispositions. And so this is based on critical thinking, flexibility, creativity, communication, and collaboration. And we don't think of these as soft skills. We actually think of them as the life skills that our students will need to be successful in college and into career.
And so when we started this, we had these goals. Knowledge, how can we increase the knowledge of our Board of Education, our parents, all of our employees? How can we increase the level of concern? Because if we get people concerned, things are going to come into action. We got all of our students GPAs uploaded at all of our schools. I don't even have to get involved in that anymore. There's a routine and a system in place. When we started the race to submit, we wanted to make sure we were doing the best job we could to ensure FAFSA and DREAM Act applications were being submitted. But after we've looked at this now 3-4 years, we should have called it the race to complete. It's not about submitting, it's about completing the application. And that's what separates some of the schools from the rest. Those that are following through and actually verifying the information, following up, checking the web grants reports with the California Student Aid Commission, they're going to see the huge return on their investment. I'd encourage all of you to check in with your seniors just prior to summer or over the summer to ensure that they're following through and actually enrolling. Don't just do this. Make sure you put things in place to get it done early, because if you get it done early, they can make more informed choice of which university they're going to go to. One of the things that motivates people is not hearing just about the number of awards, but how much money is actually being received. We don't get that information. We can't get that information from our California Student Aid Commission. But if we estimate where kids are going, we could probably find out which one's got a Cal Grant A, Cal Grant B, Cal Grant C. We could put our own estimations, and then we share that information with our board. And you want to do this and share this information systematically, because that's what's going to continue the momentum. Next slide. And so, here's another leadership suggestion. Go ahead, click it one more time. Oh, this is not a leadership suggestion. Here's some of the criticism that we got, Mike. Remember this?
Oh yeah, leave it to the assorted idiots and imbeciles at Valverde. This was, the local newspaper published an article, and then there's the comments down below the article oftentimes. So, at first my feelings were a little hurt because I'm a sensitive person. But I had the presence of mind for some reason to take a screenshot of these, Valverde, grade F. Here's another one. The disturbing thing about this one is we think this is actually one of our local professors, and he talks about the miracle of online credit recovery and, all the other stuff that, the negativity. But we actually use this as fuel. And here's the thing. This work takes courage. And so you got to be willing to step out. But if you're doing it on behalf of students so that they can achieve their college aspirations and their career goals, then you just stand firmly there, and, you're going to get some criticism.
Okay. And next slide. And so this is our last slide that we're going to share with you. But when you start this work, you may feel some resistance. And I want you to remember 3 things. And I've got this from the doctoral program I was involved in. This is probably the best book I read in the entire program. But sometimes resistance comes in the form of 3 barriers. People may be hesitant to do something because they may be lacking knowledge, they may be lacking motivation, or there may be organization barriers that get in the way. These 3 barriers are going to be the things that separate you from where you are and to where you want to be. And this book really gets into depth about what you could do to address each of the layers there. And so I just share that from you because this does take leadership. You can't do this by yourself. You can see some improvements, but not as much as if you have a whole team with you involved in the process. And Mike, did you want to touch on this?
Well, now that we know each other, you get free lifetime support from Mark and I and Catalina and Matt. I'll toss him in there too. I mean, we've all done this work. The only thing we have to gain is that more students could afford to go to college. And I love what Mark said, and it was kind of a passing statement, but I want to, as a point of emphasis, say, look, 2 things. One is, we've invested in our students for 13 years. Let's give them another 45 minutes. And the second thing is, the state of California has made the investment. The money is there for students to go to college. This is not about promoting student debt or loans. The problem is, in California, we're leaving $500 million on the table. And why would we do that? So, if you serve in a community where you believe students could benefit from this, let's help them access that free money for college. Okay, I'll turn it back over to the people who are super important on this.
Thank you so much, everyone, Mike, Mark, and Catalina, for all that wonderful information. I love that slide where you hold who is accountable for what in those activities. And as I was looking at it, I was like, well, I don't see myself on there. But I do know that as an admissions representative for a four-year institution, I too play a role in helping you achieve that goal. And it's really motivating because I think this next fall, I'm going to be much more conservative in my effort to, get students to complete the FAFSA and really getting them to understand it. Along those lines, we do have a question actually about that. It's a question from Amy. It says, who made the presentation and ran the workshop? I used to be one of the financial aid outreach persons for a community college in Central Valley. I had a total of 40 schools, and even though I held trainings for about 100 counselors every year, they still wanted to hear from the college to facilitate workshops and give presentations. Just wondering if you had a high school staff in charge of doing this. So who does your financial aid presentations at your high schools? Do you have colleges come out, or does your high school staff do those presentations?
Yeah, so it's a combination. I mean, certainly we have Cash for College workshops that come out. We also have other organizations that step in and are willing to do that for us. And very oftentimes it's our own counselors that are doing that as well. So again, we're trying to distribute the work out so that it doesn't fall on just one group of individuals. And so more people sharing that message, I think, the better. And, there's the Cal Soaps that are available in California, and that's a tremendous resource that people may or may not be aware of, but they can come in, and that's their whole organization is really designed to support this work.
I think what your counselors do too, Mr. McCormick, is they do have a counseling presentation. So let's say they go through language arts or government econ standard, they do like that tier 1, but then they have these different groups come in and support the follow-up, because it's not just the one and done presentation and everyone could participate. So they do their Cash for College at nights, they do other events, but I think that's like their tier 1. And I think the different agencies, what's been successful, as I saw in the chat, does this mean more work for counselors? Mr. McCormick's counselors reached out to me. We met like at a Denny's or something after work hours. It was like a union meeting. They were scared. They said, Catalina, we're scared. What does this mean? And I said, this means if this doesn't happen, Mr. McCormick is responsible. Mr. Lenore, it's no longer just the 5 of you or the 6 of you, it's everybody. So you'll have the special ed students with disabilities teacher takes on their students. You'll have the English learner teacher director take on and work with their students. So yes, counselors are more coordinating those, helping to make sure, this is the latest numbers, but they're not doing it alone. And I think that's the fear, is everyone thinks they're like locked up in all month of February and they're just doing FAFSAs, and that's not it at all.
And I think it's just getting, here's the thing that I always say, change is difficult. And a lot of it to me has to do with mindset. And so you could either go into it with the perspective that you're going to search out all the reasons this can't work, or you're going to go into this and be open to creatively finding the solutions and the reasons it can work. And it's not to say that I'm naive, but I think it goes back to the concept that if you set your mind to do something and you search out, get your faith-based community involved. A lot of our families go to churches on a regular basis or wherever they do their worship. That's another group that I have discovered that is more than willing to partner with the schools and the community and the parents and the students. They can be another voice for that message. So just, be thinking about, which way do you want to really be thinking about this? Because that will ultimately inform your outcome.
So another thing, just to add to that, because another question came up about, it's no longer responsible for the counselors. If I run a list right now, we look at the state and I pull up a high school, let's say Northern California, I'll sometimes see who's even pulling this data. And I think what key is everybody in the school district down to the registrar knows who hasn't submitted their FAFSA. And so that's why it becomes a district conversation and not just the one counselor or registrar that has the CSAC list of who submitted. They have multiple people with this data. Their data team drops in reports weekly. So everybody knows who's not done. So you got a teacher that says, hey, you're in my fourth period and you haven't done it yet. Does that make sense, everyone? So you just got to think differently and bigger. It's not just the counselor list.
Exactly. And I'd be willing to bet a fresh $20 bill that there's a bunch of high schools across the state of California that they aren't even aware of these resources from the California Student Aid Commission. They aren't regularly checking the race to submit dashboard. They aren't getting the reporting back. And so there's a lot of knowledge I think that needs to happen. There's a tremendous opportunity. And I think with some of these tools of technology and software, there's ways to really lighten the workload. But the first part of it is just really knowing what's available to help support this effort.
Yeah, Matt, is there anything that you would add to all of what was said?
Yeah, so one of the things as an administrator overseeing counseling in Valverde is the 3 assistant principals who oversaw this work. We kind of got together and we were sharing best practices of what we were doing. And one of the biggest things is who has access to the web grants reports, how's that information being disseminated to the staff. The counselors need it updated on a regular basis so they know who they're meeting with. The senior teachers can get intentional lists of students that are in their fourth period that haven't done it. And dispersing the work is a big systematic thing that who has access to the data, how's it being updated, how are we intentionally going for these students and meeting with them and getting them the knowledge. And it's also educating the juniors coming up, getting in the senior year because they know it's an expectation, and working with the entire staff and community and building that. But it's systematic and it's a big help when cabinet is behind you. And as an administrator at the school site, if you're overseeing counseling and college and career readiness, then that falls on you a little bit where you need to figure out a way to lighten the load for your counseling team because they are doing course requests, they are doing grades, they're looking at different things. And that's part of the systematic approach that it has to be a collective community doing it.
Right on. Christina, any other questions?
Well, Amy did have a couple of follow-up questions. I don't know if we answered them sufficiently. Amy, if you have additional questions about, how we can support staff as, if this were to move forward, how you can support staff, or if, you had schools in Central Valley that I know that they're under-resourced, can move forward. I don't know if we answered all of your questions, but if you had more, please feel free to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Lenore and I are willing to travel. We've actually visited some areas in the Central Valley along with Mr. Elder. And so, if seriously, if we can be a resource for you, we're happy to jump in there with you and see what might be possible in your community. I do understand that the local context is huge, and it needs to work for the community that you serve. And so some of the strategies and solutions that we have, although they may be a great starting point for you, the more ownership that the local community takes on this, that's going to help inform your own best practices so that you can serve your students and your families.
Yeah, I think there was a comment there, like, how do we get the information in the counselor's hands so that they can follow through and do the work that's needed? Well, we actually involved our IT department initially in running reports and sending those reports to our schools so that they knew which kids had completed and which kids had not completed their Fast Forward Dream Act. At this point in time, our IT department no longer does that. The counselors know how to access those reports themselves and are self-sufficient. And so they're able to do that. Matt, if you want to say anything else in regards to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the web grants report and who has access. So there's two persons at every school site that can get administrative access, and then you can add as many user roles as you like. But running those web grants reports once or twice a week is huge. And then how do you take a text file and change it to an Excel document or a Google sheet where everybody has access to it and you can see all the different live data? Because it's funny, and I'll just share this real quick. I get a phone call every Monday morning after Mr. McCormick and Mr. Lenore were talking on Sunday, and I get a phone call at 7 o'clock in the morning going, so Matt, we were looking at the race to submit dashboard and your numbers say this. I'm like, yeah, those are wrong. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I have my own internal data. They're about 3 to 5 days off because I knew exactly where our numbers stood just based on having those internal numbers is what everybody used to say about me is my internal numbers were this. So it's just who's disseminating that. We've done web grants training in the past just for different school sites and districts in our area, just based on understanding that work.
Right on. Well, I would just say on behalf of our team to Christina and Jessica and the whole WACAC family, thanks so much for the opportunity to share today. It was really wonderful. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for everybody who joined us. As we mentioned, this is being recorded and this information along with the slide deck will be sent out to everybody who registered in the future. But thank you so much for your time, Mike, Mark, Matt, Carolina, our fearless leader, Jessica Green, my co-chair, Robin Hamilton, and then some of the behind the scenes people such as Esther and Corinne and Priscilla who helped